Welcome to the show today, Entrepreneurs, Business, and Finance. Today, we are very fortunate to have my good friend and long-term friend, Carter Malouf, private jeweler, friend extraordinaire, on the show. Hello, Carter.
Hey, Henry. Nice to be here.
And Carter is from and lives in Dallas, where I am at the moment. But like a lot of people that are able to, they leave when it gets hot in Dallas in the summer. And so his background's probably neat. Sometimes they have these phony backgrounds and it's hard to tell the difference. But this is a real background because he's in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with a some kind of tile adobe fireplace, fancy carved door, and wasn't familiar with the term, but vigas on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Vegas, an ancient way of holding the roof up is just with the Vegas. So, and they still use it to this day in a lot of modern building.
and one of the things that we'll learn about Carter is he's very artistic in nature and appreciates art and beautiful things, as we all do. But we all don't have the same eye that he does with his training and as a private jeweler, and I think maybe a passion of his life. But we actually met very soon after I moved to Dallas. He grew up in, for those of you who aren't from Dallas Fort Worth, in the Park Cities area, which is kind of the oldest, most established part of the city, if you want to call it. Now it's gotten so big. There's probably multiple areas like that because DFW has practically doubled to Dallas Fort Worth to 8 million people. But I was fortunate enough to meet Carter and some local people that grew up here because my mom and dad were friends with Linwood Holton and his wife Jinx. And Linwood was Harvard Law classmates and roommates with Tom Slover, Mr. Slover's father. So they called when I came down and they kind of welcomed me in. And it didn't help that Linwood Holton, I mean, didn't hurt, I don't think, had been governor of Virginia. And actually, his son-in-law is Tim Kaine, who ran with Hillary Clinton and the senator from Virginia. So I had a good introduction, and I think they'd have been nice to me anyhow. But so I got to meet
It
Carter
didn't
through
hurt the
that.
fact that we introduced you to good barbecue.
And that's right, the good barbecue. So enough about me, but I wanted to say how we knew each other because it's kind of through family. We met indirectly through family. You know the Slovers through rather
Yeah.
Charles Lipscomb is going to come on the show. A number of other people here in Dallas, and that was really special to me to be welcomed in. And I got included. Been to your house. You've been to my house. Spouses know each other. We see each other often at lunch and talk about seeing each other more, which hopefully we'll do. Um,
So,
so let's talk about you grew up in Park Cities.
yeah.
Were you always interested in jewelry? Did you always think you'd be an entrepreneur, or was this something that just came on later, like most people?
I started my life thinking, oh, I was going to work for somebody else and then ultimately work for myself. Doing what? Didn't know. But you mentioned Santa Fe a couple times. When I was 14 years old, my parents bought a house out here, and I rode my bicycle by a store called Bella, and he's still in business till this day. He had some of those incredible color displays of jewelry I'd ever seen, and he allowed me to park my bike and go in there and ask questions and let a 14-year-old's curiosity come out. And so I sort of attribute that to like getting my interest going in the jewelry business. Little did I know that was going to lighten my interest. Um, but that was then, and I give him absolute credit for just getting me interested. And then in college, my mom was a jewelry designer, and she's was only designed for herself, and she had a jeweler that made things for her. When she was visiting me in Rome, Italy, she the people at the Gucci store were trying to buy her earrings off of her ears. They had not seen anything like that before. So when I got back to the States, I said, "Hey, mom, can you design me a couple pieces?" And so she designed some pieces. I had them made, and then I sold them, and then I had more pieces made, and then sold those, and then I went to school at Southwest Texas State in San Marcos, and I started getting into geology. Then I realized I didn't have the science background to be a geologist. So, but everybody was asking me if I could make jewelry out of stones and whatnot. I said, sure, let's give it a try. So it was something that again, I kept going through school, and I was kind of running this little company that was selling things, kind of doubling the inventory each and every time. And then at that point in time, Southwest was really hot. Santa Fe was hot. Scottsdale was hot. They had opened up a place called the Phoenician there in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I went there not knowing anybody. They didn't even have a store in place. They had one store, but they had that whole mall thing didn't exist. It was under construction. So they didn't have any jewelry. But I'd be there at the right place at the right time. They looked at all my stuff and they said, what if we buy it all? I said, well, okay, yeah, we could do that, And then the guy who came in and actually approved the purchase was none other than Charles Keating, and who developed the
Yes.
Phoenicia at the time.
Yeah.
Then he offered me a room to stay, and so I stayed at the Phoenician the opening weekend, and I called my parents and I said, can I come home now? And after they said, well, I have nothing else to sell. I said, you're kidding, you sold everything? I said, yeah. So that's how things got really bubbled up and got started.
Well, no, I didn't have much experience with jewels growing up in Virginia and DC, but I remember my dad had a coin collection.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating to me when I go to your office because you have so many different jewels and so many different types of um, diamonds and that I can see the appeal if I had an eye for it. And you make people happy. I mean, a friend of mine, you got them their engagement ring. Where you don't have a lot of jewelry, but you got Olga, my wife, some diamond earrings. We also had a family ring that came from my mom when she passed away. You valued that for us, and some other things as well. So it's got to be gratifying. I remember the home building days. It was very gratifying to build someone their dream home. It's got to
Absolutely.
be very gratifying to give someone jewelry that makes a big difference in their life.
It does indeed. When you make people happy, that's sort of my goal in life, things that I enjoy doing. And consequently, my wife retired from the practice of law because she saw me making people happy all the time in my business, and she wanted to do the same thing. And as such, she became an artist. And she wanted to be an artist, and then she retired from the practice of law to become a full-time artist, and now she gets to make people happy, and she it gets to share equally with that kind of enjoyment.
And that was, I mean, I remember she was a gardener uh, at your house, a
Mhm.
hobby. And then I remember when I mean, the painting is relatively new. I don't know, maybe she was doing that from a kid, is all I knew, but I thought it was relatively new.
It's
Um,
definitely very new. After her mother died, a year after her mother died, she said, she goes, I want to paint. We were in Jackson Hole. She goes, I want to paint a painting. And I said, well, what's stopping you? And then little that I know it started taking over her art studio, kind of took over my kitchen. So uh, ultimately had to build her a full on art studio when she retired from law because I needed my kitchen back.
that's funny. Well, I think that you're one of those smart people. My dad used to say it. I've repeated this before in the podcast, but find something you love to do for your work because you're going to spend a lot of your life doing that. And he loved his work, and you're one of the ones that was able to find something, but it's
Yeah.
not always easy. I just
Yeah.
know that's how life is, and you had to get your training. It wasn't like you just you know, jumped into it one day. Well, maybe you kind of did, but you had a background in it. But you went to work for a jeweler originally, right? You didn't start out on your own
No,
initially.
I did start on my own. I had a store that in Preston Center I had for 2 years. I ended up selling that and going to work for a jeweler, a more high-end jeweler in Highland Park Village. Um, and I was with him for 10 years, and that's where I really learned the fine jewelry trade. Before that, I was sort of more in the designer jewelry trade. So understanding more of the manufacturing. Then I got into more the high end and estate, learning about antique jewelry and how great things are made. Not just good things, but great things. And one of the things that really kind of brought my eye to a sharpened point was my grandfather. When I was a kid, my grandfather was an expert woodworker or carpenter, and he loved to build things. And my first name was Samuel, so he called me Sam Carter. And he goes, Sam Carter, he goes, just remember, the underside of whatever you're building has to be as beautiful as the top side. So make the underside perfect, and the outside will be perfect. And that was the way I kind of took that to light with jewelry, and making sure that every piece that I do is just as well finished on the underside as is on the outside.
Talk a little bit about, okay, 2 years in business as a very young man, sold that and went to work for someone else. What precipitated that? Because obviously you think it was very valuable, that learning time of 10 years.
Well, the transition point was I had a partner in the store. We kind of shared operations, and we weren't everything was kind of getting a little bit of a mess. Not by my accord, but it's, and so I sold my interest to him to get out of it, and then I was kind of left with, okay, what do I do now? And so the jeweler in Highland Park Village, I said, I'm consulting. Can I consult with you? And he goes, no, I really need to hire you. So that's how that kind of came about. Got
I
to
bet
meet
you.
everybody there, and it was a magical time. It was a really good time. I learned what to do, and really learned what not to do. And I think that what not to do is really how anybody who's in business for themselves learns gets their knocks in life, by learning what not to do. And that will make them, help them with what to do easier.
So let's talk about you have overhead, you have to buy some jewelry ahead of time to have in stock, I suppose. You have to have an office with security and private. You have to get clients. What's the business of being a private jeweler like? Um,
So different to a store which
you
just
do
sells,
have two hats. You're a designer
yeah.
and kind of an artesian, a jewel expert and a businessman because um, you're not doing it for free. You're not
No.
charity.
So to answer your question, to kind of differentiate myself from like one of the like people who are jewelers who have ground operations or stores in the malls. I'm not one of those jewelers you can just stop by the door and walk in and peruse. In those operations, you have to have a lot of inventory. They have to have a lot of security. There's a lot of different things that it's extra expenses that I don't incur. So I'm by appointment, and hopefully my reputation increases, and we're constantly planting seeds. Even age 58, after being in business for 17 years, there's not a day that goes by I'm not planting seeds to see under. Hopefully I get to stand underneath the shade of the trees I plant, but there's no guarantee of that. I still plant seeds regardless. I think stores, they are operating under the traditional, oh, we have to buy things, we have to sell things, and then we don't sell things, we have to discount them and move them on, right? So, like almost every retailer. I do things differently. I buy minimal amounts. I buy estates, so I'm buying very good product at very good prices, and passing on at very good prices too. And I can kind of as a result, I can undercut a lot of the competitors, and I'm at the same time they get much better customer service because it's not just a store where you're a click and buy scenario. Um, and there's no pressure sales. That's just, that word never enters my head, my mind, my mouth, or my thought processes. There's a time frame for everything, and you just have to kind of let things get. You can't force things to happen. Your people who are looking for 25 to $100,000 pieces, they don't need to be pressured. They just need to be taught what it is and educated. And then once you do that, and you earn their trust, and then once you do that, it's very easy to do business.
I went to I guess I'll call it a seminar, but it was kind of an event where you had a large audience in an auditorium and you talked
Mm.
about jewels from around the world and the mining process. And um, it really is, fascinating and requires a tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise because you know where these jewels come from.
Yeah, well, so sourcing is very important on so many different levels. One, you got to know who's got the product, um, especially if someone wants something of unique nature. I think you were referring to the film that was done. Is that right? Where I was doing the moderating for
Yeah, yes.
okay, for the director, and it was really funny because the director didn't know what the hardest of the stone was, and I had to whisper in his ear. It's a 7.5. Hardest. I don't know if you caught that or not, but that was a fun thing for me to do, and it was a last minute thing. That was where the Dallas Film Festival asked me to come in literally 2 or 3 days before and say, "Can you market this film? We have no one coming to it," and so I put it out on my uh, feed, and that we moved from the 100-person theater at the Angelica to the 200, and then they said, "Oh shoot, we do the 300." But what wasn't anticipated was we were having tornadoes that day in Dallas. You might recall the weather was pretty bad, so it kind of eliminated a lot of the 300 people necessity. But it was fun. We still had about 150 people there, and the it was what was it called? Oh, I can't remember the name of the movie, but Manzano, the Robert Manzano, the film director, was very interesting in terms of him going over and taking a stone from the source, finding a stone at the source, saying how it benefits the entire mining community when a stone is found, and then cutting that stone and then mounting the stone into a piece of jewelry, taking it from mine to market. Very unique approach, and it shows people a lot of what happens in our industry, where something comes from, how something benefits the local miners. A lot of people have gotten a little sensitive to miners, and they are think that it's not responsibly sourced, or and that sort of thing. But there are communities and schools and hospitals that are made up, and their whole primary goal is to support the mining community. So it is a good system um, that takes place, and so they and everybody benefits from it, and including the schools and the hospitals and whatnot. So it's a to me when I we talk, you hear about the lab created diamonds, which are man-made. It takes away meals and jobs and schools and hospitals away from the people. So that there's reason why I'm not a fan of them. Not to mention they're worthless when it comes. Unfortunately, you can sell them, you can buy them, they look great, but at the end of the day, there's no secondary market. So
It's money that's gone. Yeah. Well, and one of the things that's interesting too is the setting of jewels. I know that Olga has my great grandmother's ring,
mhm.
and it's antique style. That's her wedding ring. It's not the most valuable, but it's dear to us. And delicate settings, and you can pull out the magnifying glass and look in there and says, "Well, we need to that one and this." And I don't even remember all that you said, but anyhow, you send it off and fix it all up so you don't lose your stone. Or that one has
Yeah,
three stones.
yeah. The prongs over with an antique ring like Olga's, they can wear down over time. Prongs just do that. So rings need checking on every like 2 3 years. If they're platinum, every 1 year to 2 years if they're gold. And but with time, there's wear, so they need a little bit of maintenance from time to time. And sprucing up an antique ring is by no means for the weak of heart. You definitely have to have great jewelers. You got to have great equipment to work on those pieces. Remembering that the way that they were crafted, in Olga's case, 100 and some odd years ago, that was all done by hand. So we have to apply modern jewelry repair techniques to an ancient way of making the piece and making it look even and like it was there before. So fortunately, we've got great equipment like lasers, solders that actually help with that and work around that material and make it look like it was like it did back in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
That's what it was. It was um, 1890 or something like that,
Yeah.
late 18. Uh, and it's always amazing me too, because you remember jewels that people have, their rings, their settings, your eye, you just have an interest, a love, and I think a natural intuitive talent. Um, because I've noticed that you'll talk about someone's ring, and it's like you haven't seen it in 5 years. You see a lot of rings. How do you remember all that from a ring from 5 years ago?
I have no idea.
Um,
I think in some things I can't remember. I'm not very good at remembering things that come out of books, but I'm really good at remembering people's faces, people's names, how I met them, and whatnot, and the jewelry that they wear.
another thing that is interesting is that um, you just basically get your business through referrals,
All word of mouth. I've never done
all
any.
word of mouth,
No.
and so I mean, there's probably every business in the world seeks that out, and not very many people are able to do that. So that's pretty neat, you know.
I've been blessed. Believe me, not a day goes by that I don't consider myself blessed, knowing that I don't have to go out there and reach out to a different market and pay for that, um, because it's never for an upstairs operation. It's a different deal. People got to say it's almost like, oh, I know a guy who can help you, and not just sending you to a store and whatnot, and also paying retail overhead.
Right, 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 right. You also another attribute is like I mentioned, my mom's wedding ring, valuing jewelry. I know you've gone into some wealthy families and valued their um, all the jewels they have, all the jewelry they have, and that's not an easy task because there's an awful lot of expertise required to put a value on jewelry. Is that something you learned working in your 10 years at the uh, or maybe continue to learn, or how in the heck do you learn
Yeah,
that?
you definitely continue to learn. There's a lot to learn still, and there's a lot of. I was fortunate in one of the previous place I was to see a lot of jewelry come through there, and the more you see, the more your eye absorbs, the more your brain absorbs, the more you can kind of uh, regurgitate in an appraisal format, or if you have to explain something to an insurance company or whatever, how something is made, how something needs to be remade, that sort of thing. That's a craft in itself, just learning what is what and how to transmit it on paper, so that God forbid there's a loss in someone's estate or jewelry or whatever. You can take. I pride myself in taking my appraisals and being able to duplicate it as best as possibly can. Case in point, one of the few things that actually have a fun feather in my cap. I was at the Las Vegas Jewelry Show a number of years ago, and I went to a seminar on appraisals, and it was given by two people. One was a woman with Chubb, and another was with another insurance group. I think it may have been Jewelers Mutual. So I'm looking. They're saying how they were showing examples of what they would like to see in appraisals and certain things. They were talking about it. She did about a 30-minute talk, and then she puts up on a screen a redacted appraisal, meaning the customer was marked out, the jeweler was marked out, everything was marked out. And I said, "Man, that looks like my wording on there. How I like to put things on there." And I went, "That's my appraisal. I knew the exact same ring." I was like, "Well, this is unbelievable." They said, and she goes, "Now this is an example of a ring that we had to that had a $600,000 evaluation that we ended up having to pay $900,000 out of pocket. Here's the reason why. This jeweler put in this and this and this and this, and she pointed out all the different reasons about how it was. It may have been this weight, but it looked like if you had to replace it, it would be this weight, a heavier weight, in order to replace it. And because Chubb had 150% replacement policy, I told the customer about that. So it automatically marked up from $600,000 to $900,000, which they needed to do to replace it that time. So, so I went over to the lady afterwards and I said, I just want to say thank you for using my appraisal for your example and on the screen. And she says, "Are you Carter?" She said, "Carter Malouf." It was because she didn't pronounce my name. I said, "Yeah, it's Malouf, but yes, ma'am, I am." She goes, "We love it when your appraisals go through here because they're just ironclad, no getting through it, very precise." And she goes, and it's fun seeing things like that. And turns out that one of the financial groups in Dallas, a group called Tollison, Chubb was like, they were looking for somebody to do some appraisals for their clients, and they used Chubb a lot. And then Chubb said, "Call me." And so as a result, I've gotten a lot of business through them for some of their clientele. It's been quite nice. Through an insurance company. The insurance company referred me. Can you believe
I
that?
mean, that's really, well, I was a young kid, 25. I started business, built my first house. I was smart enough to realize and get a business partner that was 20 years older. The experience that you have, there's a book Malcolm Gladwell wrote, and he talks about 10,000 hours of theory. Once you have 10,000 hours in something, then you become an expert. The Beatles, 10,000 hours performing before they made it big. Bill Gates programming mainframe because they snuck out at night and got free time. There's an expert that went into the Getty Museum where they bought an art piece for $10 million. And you may have heard this story. Came from Paris. He was one of the greatest experts in the world. And he walked in, he paused, if I got the story exactly right, it's in the book. But very shortly, he said, "It's a fake." And he couldn't exactly tell why. He kind of tried to describe it, but it was his experience of 10,000 hours plus time and time again. There's things in the subconscious, there's memories that come into play, and you really can't replace that type of experience. So yeah, they're like, I can see why they come to you because they get the right appraisal. It saves them money.
Hopefully, if I don't get, I try if I can't find a history on it, something, I consult other people to see if they know something, that are in the industry. I'm not afraid to do that, and the good thing is that most of the people are also like, oh, they return the favor, say, "Oh, can you check this out for me?" So a lot of the industry seems to be locked tight in terms of information. They don't want to really give out information, but I'm fortunate to deal with people who, one, know if they're vendors, I pay on time, before on time, and so they're willing to give me any information I need that helps me, and vice versa.
You have a network of experts that you can draw upon
Yeah.
to, yeah. And you've got the experience like that art expert did. I forgot when that story was or the exact details, but it's an interesting one. It really stuck with me how someone can do that. Well, one thing that you mentioned earlier, designer jewelry and fine jewelry. Talk about a little bit about those distinguishing factors.
So a lot of it, there's a lot of cross pollination between that because a lot of designer jewelry does have some fine gemstones in it. But there's a lot of designers that promote their name and their pieces, and they definitely kind of they like to have the repeat customer. It's not like a diamond ring, which is kind of like stays in place and doesn't really change. It doesn't change up on a daily basis. Or their one set of diamond stud earrings. I don't want to say decorative, but there's a certain look to each designer that they maybe they've created a new technique in terms of metallurgy or a different way of setting, certain way of putting stones together, putting gemstones together. Case in point, there's a great designer out of New York by the name of Deidre Featherstone. She does amazing things with color and also convertible pieces, so she can do like an earring with another section underneath it that dangles off of it, and another section, and it's all removable. So you've got 4 or 5 different earrings, sets of earrings with one pair, and or you can add to it later on, add something to it. But she's a brilliant metallurgist. She's did all the platinum work herself, and then also the stone sourcing, and putting together. Absolutely amazing jeweler designer. One of the few people I could say this is like top notch, top end, some of the best stuff that's out there in terms of designer jewelry. Then the difference between that and like the company called Oscar Hyman, and Oscar Hyman has made things for Tiffany's, for Cartier, a lot of the big names, and they're very beautifully designed, but it's very fine high-end jewelry. And you could, if you see, you'll see a sapphire bracelet or Alexandrite bracelet. You don't see Alexandrite. It's a color change stone, and just really super fine high-end jewelry. So that even though it's got a name to it, it's not designer. That's just the name of the company that has been around forever. Whereas someone like Deidre Featherstone, she is a definite designer and definitely sources her own things and goes and manufactures her own things. She's got a whole shop that she oversees. So that's sort of the difference. A name, dare I say, if a name with an ego, they have to have, everybody's got to have an ego if you're going to put your name on it and promote it as your name and everything. It's just standard. It's okay. You've got, it's a good way of selling to your customers. If they've got a name, and you have to have a little bit of a higher sense of self.
Well, I see how you got out of your first difficult situation pretty successfully. You had a partnership that wasn't working well. You managed to sell out and move on to an even greater learning experience. Not everybody gets out of those situations like you did. Well done. Any other sort of difficulties that you'd like to share? Because most people have had a hard time in one respect or another. I know, you lost your father. We talked about that. I lost my father and mother. But maybe something more business wise or personally in business that challenge that you had to overcome.
Yeah, there are always challenges and there's always hurdles. And I'll tell you one that occurred to me. So when I was employed by the other jeweler, he did not want me to be in business for myself, and kind of set out some roadblocks to keep me from doing that. And I worked through the roadblocks. They were a little bit hard for the first year. I kind of stayed low, kind of kept stayed quiet, did not open up immediately. I worked out of my home, worked out of a coffee shop, that like a private little thing to the side that we can get with for discretion. And you have to start off humbly you cannot just walk into an office and make it work right away. You start off at Everest Base Camp, to get acclimated, and then you have to slowly ascend that mountain. There's no way you can start off at the top of the mountain. In the case of Everest, the lack of oxygen will get you, or the altitude will get you. It takes a while to move up there, and you're constantly climbing. So your legs begin to hurt. You get to get tired. You want to change the courses, everything else. You stay the course, because an opportunity always comes your way. You stay the course. You just keep punching through it. Always punch through the walls. Always jump those hurdles. Anything gets put in place, figure out a way to get it down, either verbally, physically, anyway, because there's always going to be something up to put up in front of you. Somebody will be jealous. Some if something may just get in your way, it could be a vendor that it's the one vendor you need and they're being difficult and you just got to figure your way around it. And I called this when I was in school. And still to this day have dyslexia. So, but I called it when I went to school the football theory of learning. It was my final paper. And if you look at a football, and everybody thinks of it as the school is expected you to learn linearly, direct line through that football, right? We read something, we pick it up, we regurgitate it on the other side. Someone who has learning differences learns differently. The goal and the end goal and the end result will be the same, but they go around over this way, they go around this way, they go underneath this way, a little bit longer way to get to that point, but they pick up different experiences along the way that they can teach on the other end how it got there. And sometimes it's actually a little bit faster approach, and but some people need to take those, go through those steps in order to learn what you learned along the way, and you have to teach them along the way. So there's different ways around everything. So figure out a way. If it's not going through linearly, find a way over, around, underneath. There's always a different approach.
Well, that is terrific. Something I strive for, confident and humble, humble and confident. Now, you are a humble man, Carter, but I know you're also confident in what you do. And a
I'm also
dog lover.
blessed. I'm also blessed.
Blessed. Yeah, we are blessed. And a dog lover, because we heard you, I think your dog, you've always been a dog lover. That's it.
Yeah.
So are we.
They're outside wanting to come in. They wanted to be a part of this podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for coming on. I know people are gonna love what you had to say, and we'll catch up soon.
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for your friendship as always.
Thank you as well.